back in the studio, and today we're talking about these babies here, light modifiers. Hey everyone, Stephan here. I hope you're doing well. As you can see, I'm surrounded by a lot of gear and we shall talk about this. But before, I got a message with a little dare. They said, I dare you to wear this outfit. Shall I? All right, why not? There you go. I don't take myself that seriously. I do not care. Look at this Viking outfit. Do I have to suck in my tummy in this? What does that look? All right. I don't know. Yes, I look like a fool, I was just told. Anyway, you know who you are. You owe me a dinner. So let's talk about light modifiers. What is the whole deal about it? Well, the right modifier for the right job. I get a lot of questions about, what should I use? And my question or answer to that is a return question. What do you like to achieve? Portraiture. Well, there's 100 different ways to create a portrait or a fashion shot or whatever it may be. So while we talk about light modifiers, there is no right or wrong answer to this. So I will talk about why I use different tools for different scenarios. However, it's also a question of taste. Now, talking about taste, let me get my other t-shirt back, please. There you go. Viking is gone, Stephan is back. Magic. So, when would you use a large Octa Bank or a large softbox versus something like a Magnum reflector or a beauty dish, or even a reflector like this? Well, the theory is quite simple. The larger the light, the softer the shadows, which for skin tones is of course the most flattering. If someone has very, very good skin, you can pretty much throw at it whatever you want. Now, if you have a fashion shoot and you have flowing clothes and you want the contrast in there, well, you would use a harder light rather than a soft light. If you have someone with bad skin, you would use a softer light rather than a harsh light. But as a general rule, the bigger the light source, the softer the skin, the softer the shadows. So, with a big light source like this Octa Bank, I can have this slightly further away and still be a very big light source. While a Magnum reflector like this one as example throws light over quite a distance, so you would use it further away. But because it's already quite small, the further away you get it, the smaller the light source becomes, and therefore the shadows become harder. Now that can be a stylish thing, that can be brilliant to bring out textures in clothes or in hair, but it's also quite hard on skin tones, especially if someone doesn't have the perfect porcelain skin. Now, let's start with the standard reflector. I use these on locations to mainly light the background. And the further away I get the light from the background, I can create some spooky shadows. If, however, I want the background to be quite soft, I will diffuse this with something like a shower cap, something like that. Now, this is a little bit bigger. This goes over the Magnum reflector, but you can just use anything that you want to diffuse it. Similarly, you could use an umbrella. Now, an umbrella for me is more like a light grenade. It's very hard to control. It's great to light a large area when you don't care where the light really hits and you just want to get this washout. For that, an umbrella is great. As soon as you want to control the light, you have to start to use different modifiers. So, talking about reflectors. This one is just a standard reflector that came with the lights. I use it sometimes, as I said, to light backgrounds. For people photography, that to me doesn't do it. Then we have something like this. This is perfect to light a background if you want to do some creative lighting, because you can have the light in there like this. The light comes up, reflects, and lights the background. It's not super even, because unless you have several lights, it will have a certain fallout or fall off, but it's a good alternative. Sometimes I use this also for a rim light. If I create a very contrasty portrait and I want just that rim light to be quite edgy, something like that can work. As with all of those, it always depends how close or how far away you have it if you want to control the spill. Next thing as a reflector would be this baby. I don't know if you can see it, but this is what we call a snoot, and it really creates quite a narrow beam. Even on that, you can then put on a grid and makes it even more controlled. Now, in a lot of photos, you see those perfectly round lights in the background or on the backdrop. Now, with any of those lights, you will not get that perfectly sharp outline. They will all, no matter how close or far away you have them, have some washout. So if you see the perfectly round shape, this is usually done with a Fresnel, which has a lens system in it, so you can actually focus the beam. Or I would say probably 90% of the time it's done in Photoshop. So if you see the perfect round shape, have a good look. It may be Photoshop or it may be a Fresnel. But getting one of these, you will get a smaller dot, a smaller spot, but you will not get the thick, sharp outlines. You would need lenses to focus for that. Now, the next thing in terms of reflectors would be the Magnum reflector. I'll take the grid out. As you can see, I use the grid quite often to really hone in where the light goes and avoid any spill that goes out. The same applies to a beauty dish, which a grid would look something like that. I've probably now thrown out the focus, but hey, it's not about me. Anyway, so this would be a grid for a beauty dish. And of course, you get them in all shapes and sizes. And I also use grids on the big Octas as well. Now, what's special about the Magnum reflector is probably my favorite of all the reflectors. It's very deep, as you can see from the side, and it throws out light very, very far and powerful, which is great if you have a shoot on the beach and you need light to travel over a distance. However, it will produce quite harsh shadows. You can use something like a shower cap, and I will show you a few examples afterwards when we go into the studio and look at or compare different photos with the Magnum reflector, some taken with the beauty dish and some taken with the Octa as well. That's really it. Then there are the square boxes, the soft boxes. I hardly ever use them, to be very honest. The reason being is I'm a portrait photographer and most of my photos are relatively close. That means that you will see catch lights in the eyes. I find the eyes one of the most beautiful things on this planet, and the shapes are all rounded. Then putting a square softbox as a catch light in the eyes, it just hurts my feelings somehow. Hence, using an Octa Bank with a round shape, hence using something like the Magnum reflector, not very often for portraits, but sometimes, and then the beauty dish. Now, the beauty dish is a misunderstood beast. It doesn't create beauty. It only creates beauty if it's really close to the subject. If you move this beauty dish further away from the subject, 3-4 meters away, it just becomes a standard reflector, creating quite harsh shadows. Now, there's some of the beauty dishes that have a silver lining inside. I use the white one again because I want this soft light, this beautiful light for portraits, and I generally have it relatively close to the face. Otherwise, I find the effect of a beauty dish, which can be amazing, really disappears if you move it too far away. And I then often use a reflector underneath to bounce some light back to create that fashion kind of portrait look that you see quite often. So it depends on the style. But if I want a really soft, beautiful portrait, then I'll use the Octa Bank. If I want a fashiony portrait with a little bit more contrast, a little bit more oomph, stronger shadows, I'll go for the beauty dish, very often with a grid. And if I want that real punch, let's say I have an athlete or quite often male subjects, I will go for something harder like this. When do I use square softboxes? I use them to light the background, to create a really even wash if I create photos on white. So here are 2 or 3 examples. I placed my trusty model quite close to the background just so that we can really see what happens with the shadows behind her. The first shot is done with the Magnum reflector and the shower cap or the diffuser on. And you can see the shadow is clearly visible, but it is relatively soft. When we take the shower cap off, the shadow becomes much stronger. But we also have a ton of spill. To eliminate that, I'll put the grid on, and now you can see that the light is really guided and we can clearly see the fall off is much more under control. Nevertheless, there is a lot of shadow. Going back to the reflector open, the shadow is there. Comparing this to the Octa Bank, same distance, shadow pretty much gone. Comparing the two, this is the Magnum reflector, this is the Octa Bank. It's a world of a difference, even though they are at the exact same distance from our model. Here's one example shot with the Octa Bank of Richard. Richard is a strong dude. He's an amazing dancer and choreographer. He's also a goofball. This is how it looked like when we did the white balance reading. But anyway, back to the photo. This is how it looked like with the Octa Bank. It's okay, but I feel his face needs that extra oomph. So we used the beauty dish with a grid just to create that extra oomph, slightly more to the side, creating stronger shadows, which I think works perfectly. And then with the exact same settings, we switched the backlights off, shooting at f8 at ISO 64, the background turned nearly black. There's just a hint of light. So if we go back and forth between those shots with the Octa Bank and with the beauty dish and the grid, and then going onto black, just switching the background off, you can see how different the final products look. So at the end of the day, it's all a question of how much shadows you want or how strong of the shadows you want. Let's assume someone has really bad skin. Well, if you use very strong light from the side, well, it creates highlights next to shadows, which creates dimension, so it actually comes out even more. If you use a really big light source very close, well, it's like yogurt in the face, where you see a lot less highlights next to shadows, less dimension, therefore smoother skin. I hope this was a little bit helpful. I know it's very generic, but that's what it is. It is a question of style and it's a question of taste. Now, if you like what I do on a weekly basis, do me the favor, give me that little like, subscribe to my channel, hit the bell icon so you get notifications when a new episode comes out, and tell others about it. It's still a very small show, very few people watch it, so even more so I would appreciate if you give me that little tick of like and maybe leave a comment. You know, we all start somewhere small. Small to big. It takes time. And when should you buy what? Start small. Get a light, see what you can do with this. Put a cheap umbrella in front. See what it does. And then over time, you just buy one after the other as you need it. All right, go out and create something and stay safe.